I'm Jane Gellissou of the University of California Press, and I have here today Carlos Castaneda, the author of Teachings of Don Juan. But I'm assuming that most of you have read the book. You all look like you have. So I think I'll just turn it over to Carlos and let it go from there. Carlos?
Okay. Maybe you would like to ask me something that you want to know.
What about Don Juan?
The way I got to know was very, it's a very fortuitous type of affair. I was not interested in finding what he knew, because I didn't know what he knew. I was interested in collecting plants. And I met him in Arizona. There was an old man that lived somewhere around there in the hills that knew a great deal about plants. And that was my interest, to collect information on plants. And we went, when this friend and myself, we went to look for him. And we were misguided by the Yuma Indians. And we wound up in the hills and never found the old man. It was later on, when I was at the end of this first trip that I made to Arizona, at the end of the summer, and I was ready to go back to Los Angeles, that I was waiting in a bus stop and the old man walked in. And that's how I met him. I talked to him for about a year. I used to go and visit him. Periodically I visited him because I like him. He's very friendly, very consistent. It's very nice to be around him. He has a great sense of humor. And I like him very much. And that was my first guiding thought. I used to go seek his company because he was very humorous, very funny. But I never suspected that he knew anything beyond the being knowledgeable in the use of plants for medicinal purposes.
Did you have a sense that he knew how to live?
No, I didn't. I thought he was fine. There's something strange about him. Well, anybody could tell that, there's something very, very strange. There are two people that I had taken down to the field with me, and that they know him. They found that he has very haunting eyes when he looks at you, because most of the time his squinting are, and you don't think, he seems to be shifty. You would say that he's a shifty-looking man, because he's not looking. Except sometimes when he looks, whenever he looks very forceful, you could acknowledge that he's looking at you. And but I never knew that he knew anything beyond that. I had no idea. When I went to do my field work, I parted from the point of view that I was the anthropologist, of course, doing the field work with the Indians, that type of thing. And that they were, I was the one who knew most everything. And they didn't. But, of course, that was a great culture shock to find out that I didn't know anything. It's a great feeling, that of really arriving. It's a sense of humbleness. Because we're the winners. We're the conquerors, And whatever we do is great. It's logical, it's magnificent. We are the only ones who are capable of anything noble. That's in the back of our mind. We cannot avoid that. And whenever we tumble down from that stand, I feel it's great.
What country are you from?
I'm from Brazil. I was born in Brazil. My grandparents are Italian.
Do you still think that he manipulated you into the last part of your book into the situation in which you were supposedly in danger of losing your soul?
Well, there's an explanation. I prefer to think that he was curing me. It makes me feel comfortable to think that this was an experience resulting from his manipulation for social cues. But maybe this witch was impersonating him. Every time I am in UCLA, of course I defend the position that he was manipulating me. That's the coherence, cogent of the pursuit of academia. But whenever I am in the field, I think they were impersonating him. And that's incoherent with what takes place there. That's a very difficult transition to make. If you are going to be dwelling in a university, if I will be a teacher, if I know that I'm going to be a teacher all my life, I could say anything, you know, and it's nice. But I may wind up again in the field very soon. Well, I made up my mind. I am going to go back maybe at the end of this month, and I'm very serious about that.
Could you describe the nature of your communication with Don Juan since you wrote the book?
We're very good friends. He's capable always to baffle me by hitting me. He never takes anything serious. I am very serious in the sense, like, I think that I have withdrawn from this apprenticeship. And I'm very serious about that. I believe that I have.
He doesn't believe it.
No.
Do you find that your approach to reality or whatever is any different since being Don Juan? Or how do you see reality?
Yes. Very different. Very different. But,
In what way?
well, I don't take things too seriously anymore.
Why did you write the second part of the book?
Why? Essentially, I'm concerned with rescuing something that has been lost for 500 years because of superstition. We all know that. It's superstition, and it's been taken as such. Therefore, in order to render it serious, to go beyond the elation, but there must be something that could be distilled from the elation period. And to me, the only way to do it is by presenting it seriously in the format of the social discourse. Otherwise, it remains in the level of the oddity. We have in the back of our minds the idea that only we could be logical, only we could be sublime, noble. Somehow I feel, maybe I'm speaking for myself alone, that that's the ethnocentric character of our action. In social science, you see that. Every social scientist goes to the field loaded with the idea that he's going to examine something and know. And that's absurd, I feel. There's no... So, in that sense, you see, I cannot escape that.
Don Juan, in the book, it mentions that he asked you never to reveal the name that Masquerade gave to you, or to reveal the circumstances under which you met.
Yeah.
Yet you wrote this whole book relating Don Juan's knowledge to anyone who would read it.
I asked him about that. I wanted to know before I ever endeavor in writing stuff like that. I asked him if it was all right. I didn't reveal anything that was not permitted. I was interested in the logical system. It's a system of logical thought. It takes a long time. It took a long time for me to discover that this was a system as exhaustive as the best presented in the world, in my world. But this what is appealing, is the order. And whatever I reveal in it has nothing to do with the things that were, let's say, taboo. I reveal only the order, only the system, so as to make us realize that the Indians are very, very tenacious. They are persistent people, and as intelligent as anybody.
Why did you read?
I think it's significant how Carlos is bending over backwards to present a system of non-ordinary reality, non-linear reality, in a conceptual framework so that it can be accepted by his peers at the University of California, by the American public. It's almost as if Carlos wasn't taking any chances that the psychedelic generation was really going to be there and ready to read the book, that the psychedelic generation could get the message, be a large enough part of the readership to pass the word. Besides talking about people, he talks about non-people. There's some really remarkable instances there where, I remember the one where Don Juan Carlos walks off into the chaparral, and he comes back and there are these three beings there who turn out later, according to Don Juan, not to even be beings. Apparently they don't have these fibers coming out, or they don't look like eggs. Do you have any insights into what these are that aren't really people, from having listened to that?
I'm not too much into that. It was part of the so-called phantoms that Carlos was describing, but it wasn't very clear to me exactly where they fit into the whole picture, except these were people, phantoms were entities that you had to look out for and be careful about.
Seems also like only a sorcerer and a man of knowledge can tell who they are, because to Carlos it looks just very much like real people, and Gennaro and Juan can recognize them, but unless we're into that other kind of knowledge, I can't claim to be able to recognize them.
Carlos talks about his experience with the datura plant, or the Jimson weed, the devil weed, in the first book, in the second book, which is dealing very heavily with the need for the psychotropic plants. He drank the root extract and rubbed himself with a paste, and what followed was an extraordinary experience. Afterwards, Don Juan discusses with him the lessons he learned. Carlos says,
"There was a question I wanted to ask him. I knew he was going to evade it, so I waited for him to mention the subject. I waited all day. Finally, before I left that evening, I had to ask him, did I really fly, Don Juan?
That is what you told me, didn't you?
I know, Don Juan. I mean, did my body fly? Did I take off like a bird?
You always ask me questions I cannot answer. You flew. That is what the second portion of the Devil's Weed is for. As you take more of it, you will learn how to fly perfectly. It is not a simple matter. A man flies with the help of the second portion of the Devil's Weed. That is all I can tell you. What you want to know makes no sense. Birds fly like birds, and a man who has taken the Devil's Weed flies
as birds do?
No, he flies as a man who has taken the weed.
Then I didn't really fly, Don Juan. I flew in my imagination, in my mind alone. Where was my body?
In the bushes. The trouble with you is that you understand things in only one way. You don't think a man flies, and yet a brujo can move 1,000 miles in 1 second to see what is going on. He can deliver a blow to his enemies long distances away. So does he or doesn't he fly?
You see, Don Juan, you and I are differently oriented. Suppose, for the sake of argument, one of my fellow students had been here with me when I took the Devil's Weed. Would he have been able to see me flying?
There you go again with your questions about what would happen if. It is useless to talk that way. If your friend or anybody else takes the second portion of the weed, all he can do is fly. Now, if he had simply watched you, he might have seen you flying, or he might not. That depends on the man.
But what I mean, Don Juan, is that if you and I look at a bird and see it fly, we agree that it is flying. But if two of my friends had seen me flying, as I did last night, would they have agreed that I was flying?
Well, they might have. You agree that birds fly because you have seen them flying. Flying is a common thing with birds, but you will not agree on other things birds do because you have never seen birds doing them. If your friends knew about men flying with the Devil's Weed, then they would agree.
Let's put it another way, Don Juan. What I mean to say is that if I had tied myself to a rock with a heavy chain, I would have flown just the same because my body had nothing to do with my flying?
If you tie yourself to a rock, I'm afraid you will have to fly holding the rock with its heavy chain.
Why did you leave?
Why did I leave? I got too frightened. This assumption and all that, I think, that we could give ourselves agreement that this is real. I'm sure that many of you must have taken psychedelic substance, like LSD or something like that, and the distortion that you suffer under the influence of psychedelics is accountable by saying, I'm seeing such and such and that and that, or this and that, because I have taken something. That's in the back of our mind, always. So anything could be, let's say, accounted for in a strange way. But whenever you begin to lose that security, I think that's time to quit. Yeah, that's my feeling, you know.
But you haven't really quit.
That's the problem.
You had several visions that you said were more or less clairvoyant visions that told you about the past, things that you supposedly didn't know about, other than the vision, for example, the graduate student supposedly saw books. Did you ever check to find out if what you saw was true or not?
Well, that's so funny, you know. There must be something. I've been involved in hunting treasures lately. Mexican came to me and told me that there was a house that had belonged to a man who had apparently stole a lot of money and never used a bank ever in his life. And he figured, he had calculated that there was at least $100,000. And he asked me if I could discover where the money was. That's an interesting proposition. Yeah. So I followed this ritual. It was a minor ritual that produces, in quotes, a vision, not as clear as a divination procedure, but it's a vision that could be interpreted. A fire that has to be made to attract whatever it is that has to be attracted. So this bunch of there were 4 people and I, they did all the ritual, they followed me, they trusted me, and we were waiting for a vision, but nothing came at all. And then the fact was that everybody was looking for this treasure under the house, because the house was still. They hide underneath the house, and they dug up the whole house. And the guy who was digging up was bitten by a black spider, one of the black widow spiders. And it was disastrous. They never found anything. So then I came into the picture, and I had a vision. I had a dream in which the owner of the house was pointing to the ceiling. And I said, aha, it's not in the basement, it's in the ceiling. And we went one day and tried to find it in the ceiling. But we couldn't find anything. It was disastrous though, because one of the Mexicans is very big. He weighs about 315 pounds. It's a big moose. And there's a small hatch to go into the ceiling. And it's an old house constructed in the 20s probably. It's very flimsy, and the ceiling is paper thin. So I was kind of walking on the beams, and this guy got very suspicious. He thought that we were going to cheat him out of his money if we found it. And he came into the ceiling, he came up, and I said, stop, David. He didn't. He walked up to where I was in the center of the house, the center of the room, because that's the place I saw you appointed, in my vision, of course. And the guy stood by me, and he went through the ceiling. He got hooked, you know, and the legs were hanging, and the upper part was a bit.
Did Don Juan make any restrictions or any regulations about the circumstances in which you can use the incantation? The question of selfish reasons.
Yes, very good. Yeah. I went to see the one, and I told him about the Savior. in how, it's very, and he said, well, it's very natural. See, it's whatever is left of a man guards whatever he's hiding. I have my notes, that I took in the field, that I treasure a great deal. I become very possessive with my notes. And the one says, will you leave your notes for any idiot to get? No, I won't. That's the point. And says, what's the difference? The guy loves his money. He's not going to let two big idiots like me come and get it. Therefore, he sets all kinds of traps and distractions. That's the turning point in my approach with Don Juan. From then on, I've never been able to think that I could trip him. He flipped me intellectually. I thought that piece is very neat, and very, very simple and coherent. And from then on, I was not ever able to think of myself as the student of anthropology, the university student coming to look down on an Indian. He completely destroyed, dislodged my affiliation to the intellectual man-made.
You made a picture of yourself as a man?
He made me think of myself as a man who doesn't know anything in relation to what he knows. But I don't know what he means. All I've given you is what he gave me. I don't know how fear could be vanquished, because I haven't vanquished it myself. I have an idea that perhaps to be applicable. I like to go into the field and test it, but that's another story. That's very different.
Did he vanquish fear?
Well, he has.
Entirely.
It looks like it's very simple. Yes, but it's once you have the mechanics, I suppose, he is starting at all times from a different point of view. He's sick. Whatever is between the phenomena that I am experiencing and me, there's always an intermediate. It's a set of expectations, motivations, language. This is name it. It's there. This is the whole set. And that's my heritage as a European. To use the set which is common to all of us, that's why we understand each other. But the one has a different set. An entirely different. That's the incapacity to understand them. Very difficult to understand what he's talking about. Like when he says that one could conquer fear. This is an interesting idea that occurred to me now, and that which I would like to test in the field. I have attended recently a peyote meeting. It was a gathering in which I just took water to them. I didn't participate. I just went there to watch, to observe. Because I have arrived to the conclusion that the consensus, the agreement that he gave me, as I narrate in this book, a private agreement, special, between the teacher and the student. But something else takes place, and it's a collective agreement. A whole bunch of people agree upon things which cannot be seen ordinarily. But I always thought that this agreement consisted in cueing the others. Therefore, there must be a leader, I thought, that could cue, by twisting the eye, something like that, slip the fingers. And therefore, they all say that they have agreed, because one gives the cue. They believe that, for instance, in the matter of peyote, anybody who takes peyote hears a buzzing in the ears. However, the Indians believe that there are 17 types of buzzing, and each one then corresponds to a precise nature of the visitation. The deity, Mescalito, comes in a specific way, and it announces it by buzzing. So there must be an agreement among the 8, 10 people as to what buzzing is it in the first place, and then the nature of it. How is the lesson going to be? Is it going to be a ferocious lesson, very dramatic, or is it going to be very mild, amenable? Well, depends on what is the, I suppose, the mood of the deity. But I thought that this agreement was accomplished by means of a code. So I went, I asked them one to, I could drive them, I took my car and drove a whole bunch of people, and I made myself available in that form. And then I could serve, I said, bring in water to them. So I watched. And I couldn't detect any code at all. However, in my effort to watch, I got involved, very deeply involved, and at a moment, I slipped. And I walked into this experience as though, in course, I had taken theory, which I didn't. This is my stand, okay? I think what they do is they hold judgment. They drop the set, and they're capable of getting the phenomena in a different level. They're capable of viewing it at a level that is different from what I do ordinarily, the way I do it ordinarily. So if I drop this set, this whatever it is that is interfering, the intermediate set between the phenomena and me, I'll arrive to this area of a special agreement. Therefore, it's very simple for them to arrive to that. I thought that in spirit, when we taught this, a whole series of days, 5, 6 days, in which they intake theory, I thought the last day was the only day in which they agreed. But then they agree every day. I don't know. I have to go and find out, you see? I don't know. I know that it's possible to hold judgment.
Go ask a question about fear, vanquishing fear entirely.
Yeah.
I think that's, as I read it, a misunderstanding. I mean, as far as fear is no longer your enemy, it doesn't mean you don't have it anymore. Right? Because he said the man always goes to knowledge, and this would be anywhere along the line, even after you vanquish fear.
Yeah.
With fear, respect, wide awake, and the fourth thing. So you always have the fear, but it's no longer your enemy. Isn't that?
No, maybe, though, however, perhaps we are afraid only because we are judging. That's another possibility. Now, once we drop the prejudgment, well, what's there to fear? At the moment, like he used to cure years ago, that's before I met him. Today, he's not interested anymore in curing or bewitching, he says. He says that he's beyond company or solitude. So, he just exists. He lives in central Mexico.
I was just going to say, what does he do with his hum?
Then he flies. I don't know. I really don't know.
Someplace in the book you mentioned that you smoked mushrooms down in the state of Chihuahua. I just wondered what...
Family, I'm sure of that. And they grow in central Mexico. Then you make a journey to live. And wait for a year before they are usable. And still inside of a gourd. And after that, they're utilized.
Were they from Oaxaca?
They're central Mexico, that area, yeah, Oaxaca. There are 14 species of psilocybin.
Can you tell us about the need and nature for secrecy and mystification, such as Don Juan?
Well, I don't know. He feels like in order to return, you have to have a great degree of help and knowledge, without which you don't return. Maybe he's right. Maybe you need not so much the encouragement or a friendly man telling you everything is the right job, don't fear. But more than that, maybe you need another type of knowledge that will render the experience utilized, meaningful, and not crack your mind, you see, not really bust you.
But you discourage someone from using these drugs in the
I do. I don't think they should, because perhaps we get to know more about it. Otherwise, we become a spearhead, and a spearhead burns. Period.
You know what the psychoactive substances are in Ventura?
The atropine and I don't know the hyoscyamine and the other two more. There's something that somebody called metalloidine, but nobody knew what metalloidine was. They're very toxic, terribly toxic. They are very harmful plants. No, the strychnine, the peyote contains strychnine, 8 times so.
Were there other units of Don Juan considered to be
Yes.
his equal as
Yes. I know two.
were they his equal in
Well,
from
not
impartial views who you are?
the one, like he says, that his predilection is talking. He likes to talk. There are other men who have another type of predilection. There's a man who gives lessons in waterfall. His predilection is balance and movement. And the other one that I know dances. And he accomplishes the same thing.
What about mushrooms in the room?
No hallucinogenic magic.
Yeah,
That's not an old world, though.
But there is both.
That's yeah, you can think that, yeah. That's
Well, that choice going all over the purpose. It's a
well, it's a sun that grows anywhere, anywhere in the United States. But the intake of the tura produces a very terrible inflammation of the prostate gland. So it's not desirable to use it. So it's a very toxic.
Did that happen to you?
No, after it's prepared, and it loses toxin. The American Indians, I think, learn a great deal in manipulating plants. And how they learn, perhaps like Don Juan says, you could arrive to a direct knowledge of complex procedures directly via tapping this whatever you got.
Can you talk a little more about the first experience about finding the good bad spots and what your interpretation of the meaning? Do you see any meaning in terms of good and bad, or good and evil, or just,
No, I don't know. I never interpreted in any way except, again, as I state, a special, ordinary reality. He, again, I think, manipulated me. And, or perhaps it's possible to see colors. I have a friend who reported the other day to me that he saw magenta. He said that was the only thing that he saw. He tried to do this at night, and he was capable of arriving to this distortion of color, whatever.
One thing I noticed while reading the book is that all of the students take this at night.
No, I think night is very friendly. The night is very friendly. Very amenable. It's warmer, that's for one reason. And the darkness is covering. It's very, it's like a blanket. Very, very nice. On the other hand, the daytime is very active, it's too busy. And it's not conducive to the feeling needed for anything like that. I like the night, I don't know why, maybe I'm an owl or something. I like the day much, it's very amenable to me. I turn the lights in my house off all the time. I feel very fine for that reason. I feel very comfortable when it's dark. And I feel very restless when there's much light.
Can you tell us more about Mescalito?
Like what? How?
Well, I don't know. Well, I was just saying, first of all, American Indians have a god who's not called Mescalito, it's called something else.
They have different names, yes.
Where did this
Mescalito is circumlocution that he uses, like to say little Joe, little Billy. Circumlocutions to mean William.
Well, is he one as one god, or is he like 1,000 million forms?
That's power. It's a teacher. It's not God. It's a teacher. It's a teacher that is outside of yourself. That you never mention it by name, because the name that he gives it to you is personal, and therefore you use the circumlocution. Mescalito, not the word Teyoro, because Teyoro means something else. It's not applicable to that. It's a word that is borrowed by the Spaniards. Teyoro is a state, very much like Teitura in Mexican, in the Spanish, used in Mexico. Teitura is called Toloache. In Toloache, the people say Toloache, but that's not accurate. Toloache is the state of knowledge. Later to the Teitura, but it's not the plant, it's the state of knowledge. And so it's another word, Ololoqui, that the Sagún that the Spanish priest was very concerned with. And people have identified Ololoqui as the seat of the morning glory. But that's not, it belongs to the Tura also. But it's again, it's a state of knowledge.
Does Don Juan or any of the other brujos have any difficulties with the church because of his...
Well, I suppose they do. They couldn't care less, one way or the other. They are capable of short-circuiting the works of the dominant society, which very appealing to me at least. To be able to short-circuit them and render them meaningless and useless and harmless. See, the one is not trying to fight anybody, therefore nobody fights with him. He's very capable. He's a hunter. He's a hunter. He's a capable man. He does everything himself.
He hunts animals
Well, in many ways, metaphorically, in in a literary way, he hunts in his own way, and he's a warrior, meaning he's alert, on his toes consistently. He never lets anything go by him. There's a great argument that I have with his grandson. His grandson says, my grandfather is feeble-minded. I said, but perhaps you're wrong. Do you think that you could have sneak up on him? And the young guy, Fernando, says, no, you cannot sneak up on my grandfather. He's a brujo. I said, that's absurd. How could you say that he's feeble-minded, and then you say that you cannot sneak up on him? But that's the idea. You see, he maintains everybody under this sort of control. He's never let me out of his sight. I'm always within his view. And it's an automatic process, unconscious. He's not aware of it, but I'm always there. At all times, he's very alert. For one, is not an Ishi. He's not an isolated man. He is a hunter, a warrior. His life is a game of strategy. He is capable of rounding up his armies and use them in the most efficient way, the most efficacious way. He's not a guy who cuts corners, but his great motto is efficacy. And that's totally opposed to my motto. My motto is waste. Like all of us, unfortunately. You see, and then I get caught in tremendous upheavals of meaning and things that split me. And I begin to whine. Why? How did it happen? If I would be able to live like the one, I could set my life in a way for strategy, set my army for strategically. Like he said, then if you lose, all you lose is a battle. That's all. And you're very happy at that. But not with me, because if I lose because they choked me, they raped me, I've been taking in my fury, no end to my fury, because I was not prepared for it. But what would happen if I was prepared? Then I was just defeated, and defeat is not so bad. But to be raped, that's terrible, that's horrendous, and that's what we all do. But what? We are raped by cigarettes. We can't stop the smoking. Or people are raped by food. They can't stop eating. I have my own quirks, and I get raped by certain things. I cannot mention that. But I do, then I feel weak and feeble, and helpless. So one seems to feel that that's an indulgence that he cannot afford to. And he is not indulgent at all. He does not indulge, and yet his life is very harmonious, terribly funny, and great. And I ponder, how in the devil can he do it? And I think it's by cutting his indulgence to nothing. And yet he lives very well. He doesn't deny himself anything. There's the trick. That's the funny trick. It's just almost a semantic manipulation. Like he said, at 6 years old, he likes girls. He says that the reason why he likes girls is because when he was young, he took one datura with the lizards, and the lizards bit him nearly to death, and he was sick for 3 months. He was in coma for weeks. And then his teacher told him not to worry about it, because from then on, he was going to be virile until the day he died. He says the lizards do that. If they bite you too hard, you become very virile. So I asked him, how could I get a couple of bites? Yes, you need more than a couple of bites. So, but he's not frugal in the sense of denial, but yet he doesn't indulge. Maybe it doesn't make sense.
Could you tell us a little more about the religion of the tribe that he comes from?
The Yaquis are Christians, Catholics, nominal Catholics. They allowed the Catholic missionaries to come in 1773, voluntarily. And after 80 years of Catholicisation, they killed all the missionaries. And no other missionary has ever come. And then they involved themselves in this war against the Mexicans. After the independence of Mexico, the Yaquis have been in war with the Mexican army for 100 years. For solid war. Solid. They raided the Mexican towns, they killed them, and finally, in 1908, at the beginning of the century, Mexico decided to put an end to this nonsense. And he rounded up, he sent in huge troops, armies, round up the Indians, put them in trains and boats, and ship them to the south, to Oaxaca, Veracruz, and Yucatan. Disperse them completely. And that was the only way to stop them. And then in 1940, after the, 1947, after the war, after what Hitler had done with populations, with masses of people, in Mexico being the avant-garde of democracy in Latin America, they couldn't stand the thing that they had done the same thing to the Yaquis. So they round the Yaquis again. Brought them back. They are again in Sonora now. So they're seasoned warriors. They're very, very, very aggressive people. It's inconceivable that one could enter into that society. It's a closed circuit. They're very aggressive. They wouldn't trust me because I'm a Mexican. They see me as a Mexican. They would trust an American. Much, much better, much easier. They hate Mexicans. They call them the Yoris, which means, pigs or something like that. And because they're being so oppressed.
Speak a little about Don Juan as Brujo and Don Juan as Diablero, right?
It's the same thing. Brujo and Diablero, those are two Spanish words to denominate, to design, to designate the same thing. Don Juan does not want to use that because it connotes the sense of evilness. So he uses the word man of knowledge. It's a Mazatec term. I conclude that whatever he learned from a Mazatec, because man of knowledge is one who knows. And one who knows is a Mazatec term. A brujo, a sorcerer, is one who knows. I hope that I'll arrive to that, I doubt very much that my makeup is the one that is required to make a man of knowledge. I don't think I have the backbone.
Well, does Don Juan agree with that?
No, he never told me that, He thinks that I have a very bad, strength. I do things because I get bored, which is pretty bad. Terrible. It's suicidal, near. He presented me the example of a man who was courageous. He found the wood carver that, was very interested in the idea of taking peyote. So one took me to Sonora as a show, so he could convince his grandson that it was very desirable to take peyote, that it would change his life. His grandson is very handsome chap, terribly handsome, and he wants to be a movie star. And he wants me to bring him to Hollywood. And he always asks me, his name is Fernando, he always asks me, he says, do you think I'm handsome, Carlos? I said, you're really handsome. He said, do you think that I could, work in the movies as a chief in a cowboy movie or something? He would be a magnificent chief. So he wants me to take him to Hollywood. He says, you just take me to the door and leave me there. I never had the opportunity to bring him to the door. But, however, the one has the intention to turn his grandson to the use of peyote. And he failed every time. He took me one day at the show, And I told them my experiences. There were about 8 Indians there listening, and they said, you know, that, well, they only cause madness. It causes insanity. And the one said, but that's not true. That would be so. Look at Carlos. He's in a great jacket. And I said, maybe he should be.
Do you think that you could have found the mental understanding that you found now by just taking the drugs without Don Juan?
No. I am very emphatic that I would be lost. I just talked to Timothy Leary and he flipped. I'm sorry, that's my personal feeling. He cannot concentrate. And that's absurd.
Is that the difference between he and Don Juan?
That's it.
Don Juan can't concentrate.
He could pinpoint things. He would exhaustively laugh at things and kick one subject until it's dead. I don't know why it's very amenable to do that. He has this sense of humor. What he lacks is the tragedy of a Western man, with tragic figures, with sublime beings groveling in mud. So one is not. He's not a sublime being. He told me himself. I had a great discussion with him once about dignity. And I said that I have dignity. And if I'm going to live without dignity, I'll blow my head off. And I mean it. And I don't know how I mean it, but I do mean it. And he said, well, that's nonsense. I don't understand what is dignity. Since I have no dignity, I'm an Indian. I have only life. That was his plan, you know. And I argue with him. I said, listen, please, I want to desperately to understand. I said, what I mean by dignity is, I said, what happened to the Indians when the Spaniards came? They actually forced them to live a life that had no dignity. They forced them to take the path without heart. And he says, that's not true. The Spaniards rounded up the Indians who had dignity. Only the Indians who had already dignity. Maybe he's right. They never rounded him up. What bothered me very much about Don Juan is the way he's looking at me. I told Don Juan when I met him, this guy introduced me to him. He introduced him. He says, that's the man I saw you about. And I went to Don Juan myself, and I said, my name's so-and-so. In Spanish, my name means a spider. Charlie Spider. If I say that, I'm Charlie Spider, he crack up. That was an entry. That was a very good entry. So, then, you know, after that, you know, we sort of hid around for a while because he couldn't believe that anybody could name the Spider is the name even, you know, funny name. But at any rate, after that, then I thought that was my golden opportunity to make my entry. And I said, listen, I understand that you know a great deal about peyote. I do too. I know a great deal about it. Maybe it'll be, you know, to our mutual benefit, we can get together and talk about it. That was my presentation. I mean, we used to that, you know, that formal presentation. I've been using it over and over. So he looked at me. He really looked at me in a very funny way I cannot portray. But I knew at that moment that he knew that I didn't know anything. Yeah, I was just throwing the ball, you know, completely bluffing him. That's what bothered me very much. I never even looked at that way, ever. So that was enough for me to be very interested in going to see him. Nobody's ever looked at me that way. Yes?
I would like to know, like the feeling that Don Juan has that are not good to take all of these things without the guidance of a teacher or whatever. If that's not good and is not a good path to take, then, like, what means is left for, like, people who don't have a person like Don Juan?
That's the real problem. I think that's an untenable position. You see, I place myself in that position by myself. You see, that's an untenable position. I wouldn't know. It's like when I went to see him, when the book came out, I took it to him. And I got a book, you know, and I pretended that it was the first book that ever came out of the presses, you know. and I wanted to take it to the one. Maybe it was the first book, I don't know. Perhaps it was. I wanted to believe that it was, anyway. And I took it to him, and I get it. It was very difficult to reach him in the first place, because he was way up in the central part of Mexico. I had to wait for a couple of days. And then finally he came down to town, and I gave him the book. I said, Don Juan, look, I finished the book. And he looked at it, and he thought it was very nice. He said, it's a nice book. And I said, in a fit of passion, I said, I want you to have it. I want you to keep it. And he said, why can't I do with a book? You know what we do with paper in Mexico?